Onto the campaign trail in 2020, and there's a new poll out of a pivotal state. Joe Biden beating President Trump by 9 points in a Wisconsin matchup. Marquette University Law School's poll also has Bernie Sanders coming out 4 points ahead. And so we're going to talk about this with the Democratic strategist Antoine Seawright and former senior advisor to Hillary Clinton's campaign in South Carolina, and attorney and conservative radio talk show host Chandelle Summer. Good morning, you guys.
Good morning.
Good morning, Joe.
All right, Chandelle, these numbers, especially if you look at those Biden numbers, it's 9 points. I mean, how big of a problem is this for President Trump?
It's not a problem at all. It's very early. And you've got a situation where the Democrats are really focusing on Wisconsin right now. They've indicated they're going to have their convention there. So, of course, a lot of Wisconsin voters are probably focused on the Democratic candidates right now. Biden is the most moderate of all of the candidates, and I think it signifies that voters are screaming for a moderate candidate. But when you get right down to it, in the general election, I think Trump is going to look like the more moderate candidate because of his more pro-capitalist policies, his, not wanting to recognize some of these crazy ideas that some of the Democratic candidates have floated about forgiving student loans and giving Medicaid, Medicare for all.
So a few things. I think my dear friend on this Saturday morning has forgotten the fact that Democrats ran the table in Wisconsin in the 2018 midterms, and that was not because of any other reason other than the rejection of the Donald Trump political agenda for the state and for the country. I think you also tried to paint this picture that somehow or another the Democratic platform is so out of touch with America. When you just look at the raw numbers, you would know that millennials are hungry and thirsty for a policy agenda that speaks to college debt and college tuition, lowering college tuition. So for you to say that this is some policy agenda that does not work for the people of Wisconsin, I think it's just I think it's bad politics on your part.
Well,
Chandelle, go ahead, respond to that.
The thing about Wisconsin is it used to be a very strong Democratic state.
It still is. We won
Governor
in
Scott
2018.
Walker,
every statewide office in the state is now under the Democratic umbrella. So it's not what it used to be, it's what it is right now.
Governor Scott Walker controlled the state for 8 years, and he was able to gut organized labor, so they no longer have a stronghold in that state. You also have more white voters overall in the state of Wisconsin than you do in the other battleground states like Pennsylvania and Michigan. So Wisconsin is very much in play for the Republicans. And even though they did win the governor's race in 2018 by a very narrow margin, they lost the Supreme Court race.
Guys, I also want to point out here that the margin of error in this poll is plus or minus 3.9 points, right? So we're talking about a margin of error situation with Sanders, a little better situation if you're on Team Biden for him with that 9-point lead in the head-to-heads. But Antoine, speaking of Biden, I want to get your take on his performance at the climate town hall at CNN. Headlines are describing him as bumbling and on defense. Could this add to some Democrats' concerns about whether he is the right nominee for 2020?
Every time the media and those in the Beltway paint this picture about Joe Biden that somehow or another the picture they paint is the right picture, he tends to come out stronger than he was before. And I don't think this example would be any different. Look, it was Vice President Joe Biden under President Barack Obama who led the charge when it comes to making climate change a real conversation in this country with all the work they did for 8 successful years. So this idea that people who would never be for Joe Biden want to paint a picture every time he speaks in public, I think it's just, it doesn't do anything for the long-term health of this primary process. Look, Joe Biden, who he is already baked into why people support him. So I think we need to really get back to focusing on what the real issues are, and that is the fact that whatever Democrats tend to talk about, it is a very healthy alternative to what the Republicans want to have a conversation about.
Well, let's talk about some real issues here with the economy, right? We got some new numbers yesterday that could be tough for Trump in terms of re-election. The U.S. adding only 130,000 jobs in August. That was much lower than expected. And this chart here shows the larger trend of job growth over time. You can see that decline, especially year over year. The Hill headline says slowing job growth raises 2020 stakes for Trump. So, Chandelle, what does the president need to do here to make sure the economic picture is strong? Because the fundamentals of the economy right now are showing signs of weakness, regardless of which party you're coming from.
These are the normal fluctuations in economic indicators, and all of the experts agree on that. You're not going to have continuous growth in an economy. You're going to have ups and downs and fluctuations throughout history.
However, hold on. Chandelle, what I want to know is, yes, you have fluctuations in the economy, but you have a president who's really hanging his hat on the economy. And what we're starting to see is not only more fluctuations, but we're talking about global volatility, manufacturing in recession. I mean, these are just numbers that matter. So what would you advise the president to do looking ahead, thinking, okay, we may be looking at a weaker economic picture here, maybe?
Well, I think that he would like to see the Fed reduce interest rates
to stimulate
investment.
Which they've flagged that they will probably do.
Yes, and they will probably do that. There's no inflation, so there's really no reason for them not to do that. I think that he would like to see continued pressure on China so that we bring manufacturing back to this country and we stop manufacturing everything in China and then allowing them to rip us off with their tariffs and their policies over there. So I think he's doing the right things. He's not worried. He's not checking the polls every day like maybe the Democratic candidates are.
No,
Chandelle. Definitely up for debate. Antoine, I want to give you the last word here. We got to go.
Chandelle, he is checking the polls every day, but keep in mind, this president and the Republicans have put all their stock, not necessarily in the economy, but in the stock market. And now we've seen that starting to come back and bite them. And I will remind you, as I do every week, that there's a such thing as a working poor in this country because of Donald Trump and his reckless economic policies. All
right, Antoine Seawright, Chandelle Summers, always a good debate. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Joe.